Welcome to Mason Street Retirement Insights, ladies and gentlemen, the podcast hosted by Sean Mason, retirement strategist and founder of Mason Street Wealth Management, serving Fresno proudly and have been for a long time. Get in touch with Sean and the team at masonstreetwealthmanagement.com. Dial them up, old-fashioned style, on that telephone, 559-892-0002, 559-892-0002, or again, you can go to masonstreetwealthmanagement.com. There's a contact button on there. Get on the list. And by the way, Sean is out in the community a lot here doing some retirement 101 classes. So let me bring you in, Sean, because you've just gotten done with a couple of recent engagements, or the precipice of getting done with a couple of engagements at CSU Fresno, right? So how you doing, and how was that?
I'm doing really good, Doug, and those classes are going great. We're really fortunate. We teach adult education courses at Fresno State, primarily on retirement planning subjects, Social Security, taxes, wealth planning, and basic retirement 101 classes. So those are really good.
Well, and as I see on the events page at masonstreetwealthmanagement.com, everyone who attends is eligible to receive a free, no obligation, in-depth retirement plan. So if people want to come to those, your next ones are June 17th and 19th at CSU Fresno, and they're in the evening, about 6 to 8 p.m. Can anybody just walk in and go? Do they need to RSVP and sign up? How does it work?
It's best to RSVP and sign up because they fill up, and we want you to have a seat. It's a ton of good information. It's really comprehensive information depending on what subject we're discussing.
Gotcha. Well, some people just need that first skim, right? Each of these episodes is a skim of a different retirement topic, but then there's the skim of the skim, like an overarching view. You get to sit down for about 2 hours and really get into that, because I'm sure, Sean, there are a lot of people, surprisingly, for as much information as out there are a lot of people that haven't given this enough thought.
It's really true. We know that more people will spend more time on travel arrangements than they will their retirement arrangements, and that's for sure. What makes this a little bit difficult is that it's a puzzle, and one piece of the puzzle is always affecting another one. So in our courses, we're always connecting those dots and helping people understand, look, I've got to be looking at this thing holistically so that I'm taking in consideration all the elements of retirement that I'm trying to plan for.
Take it all into consideration there. Sign up for June 17th or 19th. Those are the next ones. CSU Fresno Retirement 101 with your own Sean Mason here. And of course, this podcast is available. It comes out in new episodes roughly every 2 weeks. Sometimes we waver on the schedule a little bit, but it's roughly every 2 weeks. You can find them on Apple and Spotify, some of the other podcatchers, and under the media page at masonstreetwealthmanagement.com. And share it with a friend too. Send it a link to somebody you know that needs to get their retirement house in order. Now, our last two episodes, we discussed misconceptions about annuities. There's kind of been the old school, not your grandma's annuity, right? And then there's more new school ones that really resonated well with people. We also talked about tax planning and comparing that to tax prep. We actually recorded that on tax day, so it was top of mind. Be sure to check those out in all the places I just mentioned, including the media tab, masonstreetwealthmanagement.com. Today, I want to find out, Sean, how in the world someone doesn't know how long they're going to be retired, because we don't know how long we're going to live, when there are all these different variables that can change in someone's retirement. How in the world do they find out if they have enough to retire, and how does Mason Street Wealth Management help?
It's a big question. When we are teaching classes, and I ask the audience, and there could be 10 attendees there could be 40 attendees. It always comes back the same. I say, what is your biggest concern? And everybody is always, do I have enough money to retire? Am I going to run out of money? How much money should I have? And I'll tell you, there is a misconception, Doug, and that is, and a lot of publications over the last maybe 5 to 7 years have been writing about this, that people are very focused on the amount of money that they have saved in order to retire. And although that is really important, of course, it makes sense to try and figure out what that number needs to be. But it's really about the income that we generate. Income is what's going to drive lifestyle, at least from a financial perspective. And so the income strategies that we utilize to distribute all of our resources to ourselves are what's key.
Right, the income strategies. And we just talked about that in our last episode about annuities. So besides annuities, right, you've got your savings, you've got one vessel that's annuities. What are some of those income strategies then that you can help people do that? And before we kind of find out how people arrive at the number, just real quickly, what are some of those different income tools potentially?
Social Security needs to be taken into consideration. It's one of the larger buckets of resources that we have, and there's probably several hundred strategies that we can utilize. Everybody's different as to what strategy they should use. That'll go in conjunction with any pensions that they have. If they have rental income from properties, we're utilizing stock dividends, interest from bonds. There's just a myriad of resources that we can generate income from, and they all will react with each other. That's the key. We've got to understand, how do they all fit together?
Yes, and that's why they need someone like you to help them figure out how the pieces fit. But now people always want a magic number. How much do I need to retire? So how do you help them find that out then? If you've kind of talked about the misconception, okay, you think, okay, I just have to have this number saved and then I live off of my savings, but obviously there are numbers that change, numbers that grow over time, but people still need to have a sense of how much I need per year, how much I need per month. So how do you help them? What equation do you use to help them account for that?
That's really true, and such a big piece of that is based on when they're going to retire, right? And so depending on our longevity, our life expectancy, how long are we going to be in retirement, big piece of the puzzle as to how much we need to have saved, how much income we're going to be able to generate over that time. You know, a kind of a rule of thumb that you could use, and I just really suggest that people do not utilize this as all-encompassing, but figure out what your income is, Social Security, pensions, and then determine what the number of dollars that you want to be able to spend is every year, and then divide that out. That's going to give you the total number of assets that you have to need to have accumulated. You got to keep in mind, though, taxes are a big piece of it. As unique as we all are, we all have one common goal, and you've heard me say this many times, especially if you've been to a class. Our unique goal that everybody shares is that we need to get as many spendable dollars out of our resources as possible throughout our lifetime. Everybody has that goal because everything is derived from that number. And then whatever's left, make sure that we're passing it to who we care about and not to who we don't care about, which is typically the government in the form of taxation.
Our son, Sam, not our Uncle Sam, right? Yes, no doubt. Well, and I know you said you stress, hey, look, the rule of thumb applies differently to everybody. We have different needs, different things like that. But that is something to consider is, okay, let's just start out what that income is. And then I want to find out, so it's income basically minus what you expect to spend, which that expect to spend, a lot of people probably lowball that, don't they, Sean? They think, I might expect to spend, okay, my mortgage is this, my water is this, my insurance premiums are that. They probably don't think of, oh, wait, I have to replace a roof, or, oh, I would love to go out to eat twice a week, right?
It's so true. And they don't consider, probably the biggest mistake that people make is inflation, not considering inflation. It's really big. Understanding that all of these pieces of the puzzle are going to come into play. When you talk about inflation, when you talk about taxes, when you're trying to figure out how much money do I need to be able to spend every month or every year without running out at the end of my life, all of these elements come into play when we're trying to figure out that number. It's a tough number to hit.
A recent Allianz survey of 1,000 Americans showed that roughly 2/3 of them were more afraid of going broke than dying. 2/3 of them were roughly. Now, I got to say, I'm just based on my faith and things like that, I'm not worried or afraid of dying. I'm more worried about how I die. And don't want my last words to be a curse word. Can I just say that? I don't want it to be, fill in the blank, okay? But that to me is kind of a sad thing. Like, oh my gosh, they're afraid of going broke more than they are dying. What kind of way do you live that you worry about that? And it's like, how many of those people have a plan, Sean? And it's really about having a plan after you determine kind of this sort of nebulous figure of what you need to retire. Then it's about making a plan to execute to get to that number, right? So do you think that, have you seen in your experience, you got many years doing this, right? Have you seen that when people have a plan, they generally, the average person, has a little bit less fear and anxiety about this?
100%. There is no question about it. And that's why we're such big advocates of comprehensive planning. Going back to that Allianz study, it's so true. I mean, we'll have, I think just a few days ago, we had a couple in here, and it looked like they were just going to fall short of having enough money based on when they wanted to retire. And believe it or not, he started to talk about how he believed he was probably going to pass a little bit earlier than we were planning on.
Oh.
Just to make sure that those numbers fit and that they could feel right. Planning is essential. Comprehensive planning is essential. We've got to know these numbers. It's what makes you feel confident, having that certainty that life is going to be the way that we expect it to be.
And look, there's always variables that you never would expect. You've got to try to plan for those too, whether it's needing a new roof or whether it's long-term care. So Sean, if somebody wants to set up that first call with you to just find out maybe what one of these plans will look like, if you and them are a good fit, all of those things, how do they get in touch, and what is that first call like?
Give us a call. Either schedule some time to speak with me, or on the phone, or schedule some time to come into the office and we can have a first initial discussion. I want to make sure that we use people's time efficiently.
Yes.
So that first session is really discussing questions, answering questions, doing whatever we can do to put you in a better position. We're going to discuss what those recommendations might be, and that might be moving forward and, additional comprehensive planning.
Comprehensive being the word. It's a complimentary first call, but the plan is comprehensive, all right? This isn't free like a koozie and you might forget about it in the pantry. No, this could be a call truly that could change your trajectory if you choose to go with it here. So that number is 559-892-0002. 559-892-0002. Get in touch with Sean Mason and the Mason Street Wealth Management team, and you can also find them, of course, MasonStreetWealthManagement.com. Serving Fresno for a long time. There's a contact us button on there. There's an events page on there. And soon on that page will be these June 17th and 19th Retirement 101 events from 6 to 8 p.m. at CSU Fresno. Go ahead and RSVP to make sure that there is room for you there. And thankfully, 2 events that week to get you in the door. Well, Sean, thanks for making the time today to at least begin the beginning of a discussion, I would say. And I look forward to learning more from you soon, sir.
It's always great to communicate with the community. I appreciate the time.
Absolutely. I know the community does too. And we thank all of you for listening here to Mason Street Retirement Insights. And thanks to the new producer of this show, Rob Scott on the ones and twos, getting this thing published. He's over there and making beautiful retirement music here as we speak. This show comes out roughly every 2 weeks. You can find it on Apple and Spotify and some of the other podcast places. I just want to tell you all, remind you once again, and on the media page at MasonStreetWealthManagement.com. If you heard something you think your friends need to know, or your mom or your sister or whoever it is, send them the link right now and make sure and subscribe as these episodes come out roughly every 2 weeks. Sean Mason is a retirement strategist and the founder of Mason Street Wealth Management. I'm your co-host, Doug Turnbull. Thank you for listening and have yourselves a wonderful day. We'll talk to you soon. Mason Street Wealth Management, MSWM, is a registered investment advisor, and the opinions expressed by MSWM on this show are their own and do not reflect the opinions of Motivate Investments. Registration is not an endorsement by securities regulators. Investment advisory services are offered through Motivate Investments, an SEC-registered investment advisory firm. All statements and opinions expressed are based upon information considered reliable, although it should not be relied upon as such. Any statements or opinions are subject to change without notice. The information presented is for educational purposes only and does not intend to make an offer or solicitation for the sale or purchase of any specific securities, investments, or investment strategies. Investments involve risk and, unless otherwise stated, are not guaranteed. Information expressed does not take into account your specific situation or objectives and is not intended as recommendations appropriate for any individual. Listeners are encouraged to seek advice from a qualified tax, legal, or investment advisor to determine whether any information presented may be suitable for their specific situation. Past performance is not indicative of future performance. By contacting us, you may be provided with information about insurance products, including annuities. Offered through Sean A. Mason, California, insurance license number 0B54860. The firms are separate entities. Annuity guarantees rely on the financial strength and claims-paying ability of the issuing insurance company and are not offered by Motivate Investments. Read your contract for restrictions, limitations, or penalties. MSWM is not licensed in all 50 states. To find out if MSWM is licensed in your state, please call 559-892-0002.